I'm Vonda Barber with Real Property Experts, and I have a special guest with me today, a longtime friend and associate, known Rob for about since 2018, somebody that I know is extremely educated and gives great information, loves to as well. So Rob, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep. So my name is Rob Aubrey, and I've known Vonda for quite some time. And so a little background on me: I've been in the real estate industry since 1992. So I've seen a lot of ups and downs and waves and things come and go. Markets are always different, and so I've been a real estate agent, an associate broker, a principal broker. I've owned my own brokerage. I'm in the mortgage business. So I am a mortgage loan officer and I work for a company, Nexa. So as you can see up in the corner. So anyway, so that's kind of my background. Been through a lot of the cycles in the business. So that's why Vonda asked me to talk about the market. So here we are. What do you want to know?
Yeah, let's talk about what the current rates are doing and the industry. We know that with buyers right now, it's a good time for them to buy before the competition builds up with the rates dropping down, because
Right.
then prices go up as well. So,
Right. So let's talk about rates. So rates, we had about a month and a half or 2 months ago, we had this like pretty decent drop in rates. But then when the Fed made their 50 basis point rate cut, then that actually caused rates to go up. Believe it or not. So what a lot of people don't realize is the Fed rate is not a mortgage rate. The Fed rate is overnight loans that banks use. So it's a short-term rate. And so mortgage rates are tied to the 10-year bonds, 10-year treasuries, right? So we'll talk a little about that. So while the Fed rate can have some influence on what a mortgage rate may do, they're not directly tied together. In other words, if the Fed drops the rate, the mortgage rates don't drop. It has nothing to do with that part. So let's talk about the 10-year treasury bond. And so the the higher demand, right? So the way it works is a bond. So a bond seller says, I will, if you buy this bond, I'll pay you, say, 1% interest. And the buyer says, well, I'm not going to do that for 1%. That's not enough money. Okay, what if I paid you 2%? Still not enough. And so they're going to keep increasing how much they're willing to pay until the market says, yeah, we'll buy that. And so that's kind of how the price of the bond works, right? So now that we have that, let's set that aside for a second. Now let's talk about how that. So when mortgage lenders write loans or buy loans in the secondary market, they're typically using bond money. So they get money from the bond market to buy mortgages, but they have to have a yield spread. So in a normal market maybe a lesser interest rate market, then the spread between what the bond will pay and the mortgage rate is usually around 2%. But when the rates are a little higher, then the lenders are aware, because the lender needs to hold the loan for a certain period of time in order to make money. If they don't hold it for a certain period of time, they don't make any money because it costs money to do a loan. So they need to recoup their money and it takes time. And that could vary bank to bank, lender to lender, whatever, secondary market, whatever. And so normally in a normal market where the lenders don't have the fear that you're going to refinance right away. And so that market, it's usually a 2% spread. So if the bond market's paying 3%, then the mortgage rates are typically around 5%. But as bond market prices are higher, then they actually increase the yield spread from 2 to say 2.5, maybe 2 3/4, because they need to make a bigger spread because they know the average person will refinance the loan. So they need to make a little more money up front because they know they're not going to hold the loan for a long period of time. Does that make sense?
that makes sense. Yes.
So when rates are around, or when the bond market's in the 4.5 range, so now the lenders are going to make a 2.5% yield spread. So rather than a 3% bond making 5% mortgage rates, a 4.5% bond will make a 7% mortgage rate. So that's kind of the way the bond market and the mortgage rate correlate together. Now the feds, now they can influence the market with the Fed rates overall, but it's not a direct connection. The other thing that happens, and so now that we understand how the pricing of the bond to mortgage rates work, now what influences the bond market? Well, the stock market. If the stock market does well, then the money usually flees the bond market and goes into the stock market. So that means the demand for bonds is lower. So in order to get people to buy bonds, they have to offer a higher rate, which makes mortgage rates higher. So if the stock market doesn't do as well, then people will flee the stock market and go to bonds where it's safe. And then when the demand is created higher, then they don't have to pay as much. So they say, oh, if everybody wants a bond, then let's say, we'll go 4.25. People still buying them. Let's go 4. People still buying them. 3.75. People are still buying them. So they keep doing that until that slows down. They know where that spot is, where the market will take it to, because they like the bond market for safety reasons. It's secure. So excuse me. So that's some insight on how mortgage rates work, tied to the bond market, and then what causes the bond market to go up and down. So I hope that made sense.
Makes a lot of sense. So where are we looking at? What do you think is going to happen now with the new election and everything going on? Do you think that's going to make a change over the next year?
Yeah,
Possibility with
yeah, it's hard to say how long, but I think there'll definitely be changes. I mean, the whole platform of the election was the economy, right? Or at least the winner of the election was all about the economy. So it's kind of a wait and see what's going to happen in the economy. So one of the things that the federal government can actually do to lower rates, but they have to be careful. If they lower them too much, then they cause too much buying, and that causes inflation, right? Because remember, what is inflation? Inflation is simply too much money chasing too few goods. So if the rates come too low too fast, you have a surgence of money into the market, which now is inflationary. So they got themselves in the current situation. They really painted themselves in a corner. Now there's things that can be done. Now, they talked about, one of the things that, we need the cost of housing to come down. And the way that's done is through building, because unless we build houses, we're always going to have a shortage. So, and we have a severe shortage, and it varies, state to state. But on a national scale, we have a severe shortage, like to the tune of like maybe 4 million homes.
right.
At least a couple million, right? I mean, it depends on who you listen to.
Yeah, and we've kind of had
And
that
so,
shortage around this area, Salt Lake and Park City, for quite some time.
yeah, I mean, we're about 40,000 houses short numbers that I've heard in Utah. So 40,000. And so, in order to do that, and if we build, say, I don't know, 7,000 houses a year, I mean, we're 6 years just to break even. That's assuming nobody moves here and no new people come of age. So that means that at a pace of 7,000 homes a year, I mean, it would just take 6 years just based on the numbers of people we have today, but that's not counting any new people. So it may take, 8, 9, 10 years to just to kind of like catch up. And so based on that thought, housing prices typically won't go down. Because what causes prices to go down? And typically that's too many sellers and not enough buyers. So then sellers have to start competing for buyers. But right now, sellers don't have to compete for buyers. They do insert, and it's kind of a weird market, right? And so, I mean, I've been in the industry 32 years. I was teaching a CE class last week, and there was an agent, wonderful agent I've known for quite a while, Her name is Joan Pate. I mean, she's a legend in the industry. She's been in license for like 50 years. And so she was literally the number one agent in the country for like 14 years in a row. And so, I mean, so even she said, I've never seen a market like this. And so the market like this, what I mean by that is we have such a demand. We have inventory. We do. We're not, I mean, we have enough, we have a pretty good bit of homes for sale. The problem is you have not enough of the right types of homes for sale. In other words, we need a lot of entry level homes for sale because we have people that would love to, sell this house, but these people are like, well, we need that. We need a place for the first time buyers to go so that they push everything up. So that the entry level buyers push the market up. All ships rise with the tide. So we just don't have enough in that range. And then the ones we do, now they're all sitting on these low rate mortgages. And so the ones that would love to sell and buy, they're sitting on low rate mortgages. So they're like kind of feeling stuck. So let's say you bought a house 5 years ago for 250,000. Well, now let's say it's worth 500,000 today. Well, that's 250,000 in equity, not counting any kind of pay down in the mortgage. So there's, let's just say they have 250,000 in equity, but they would have to sell that house. They would have to buy a 700,000 or a 750 house. So now they have a $250,000 mortgage at 3.5%, 4%. Now they would have to go into a $500,000 mortgage. So they'd have to double their mortgage. And in some cases, they'd have to double their interest rate.
Right.
So that just causes a problem. So we kind of have that like bottleneck there. That's like people are kind of stuck. So where lower rates will help that, but we have to be careful. Too low, too fast creates, because as soon as rates start to come down, we're going to have literally a tsunami of buyers rushing into the market that have been wanting to buy but kind of priced out. So, so that's what's going to happen when rates do go down. So we have to be careful because we have to get some inventory in there so that prices don't spike as much. And let's stop on a minute for that. Let's stop for a minute there. So what does that mean? So because of the rate environment we're in, so people that are thinking about, I want to wait for rates to come down, that's a mistake. Because right now, interest rates are a buyer's friend. And, that kind of seems counterintuitive. But what do I mean by that? If rates come down, and if you wait for rates to come down, the prices will increase. Any savings in rate coming down will be gone, will be wasted by the increase of the price of the home. So buyers are better off buying now while the prices are where they are, because they're not going to go lower. And then they can refinance when rates do come down.
And then they've gained more equity in their home.
Right.
Which otherwise is going to cost them more later down the road. So
right, it'll actually cost more money. Right. Their monthly payment, because the buyers that work on a monthly payment, right? So I always look at, you have payment, interest rate is on a teeter-totter, and the monthly payment, I'm sorry, price and rate are on a teeter-totter, and the fulcrum in the middle is the buyer's monthly payment. This is what they can afford to pay. And so that can't change. In other words, unless they start making more money. So that's a whole nother economic story. But so a buyer, let's say whatever payment they have, that's a kind of a fixed number. So on one side of the teeter-totter, you have interest rates, and the other side you have price. As the rates go higher, then the price kind of goes down. So you have that kind of a teeter-totter. And then the other way around, as rates go down, prices go up. So right now we're kind of at that balance. We're not going anywhere. So now, in my opinion, is get in the market now, because the goal is you have to get in the market. If you don't get in, you're out. It's just that simple. Excuse me.
And why keep paying someone else's investment when you can pay your own?
Right.
And gain equity.
So right now we're, especially in the Utah market and most marketplace, remember, real estate's local in nature. I mean, you can have a zip code that has two different markets in it, literally. And so real estate is local in nature, but overall, we're seeing about a 4% increase in housing prices. So a $500,000 house, a 4% increase in 1 year, it's going to increase by $20,000.
Right.
So you're better off buying now at a little higher rate because because you're going to get the 4% on natural growth. But if rates come down, you're going to see that, and it's not going to be 4%. It's going to be 6, 7, and 8%. There's going to be that kind of adjustment period, and then it'll settle in again. But so if rates were to come down, and then we saw a 7% increase in pricing, that on a $500,000 house, that's $35,000 in equity, where you lost. If you're waiting for rates, you actually lost more by having a little higher rate payment for 2 years or so. Because what if your payment was $200 a month more for 2 years? That's what, 20, that's $4,800. But if prices spiked 35,000, well, that was a good value to pay $4,800 more in a 2 year period to gain a $35,000 increase.
Absolutely. I'm with you there.
So
And
that's kind of the situation we're in.
yeah, there's still so many buyers out there who just are holding off on buying because they want to wait till those rates drop.
Right.
And yes, the rate does change how much you can afford, but then,
Correct. Right.
you
If you
might
could
just start with a smaller home and you can add on
exactly
to it or something.
right. Let a $350,000 or $400,000 house go up 7%. That's $28,000 in gained wealth.
Good rate of return. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I had that one chart. Let's see it real quick. So let's see. Let me share my screen a little bit here.
And so while you're looking for your screen, so those people who have a credit score of 700 are pretty golden, right?
Pretty much,
And
yeah.
getting into a good
700.
interest rate.
Yeah, it depends on the loan program. Now, conventional rates, you want to be definitely in the 720 or above range because they have a thing called LLPA. So LLPA stands for Loan Level Pricing Adjustment. So, because people say, what are today's rates? Well, there's no such thing as today's rate. There's at least 7 variables that go into determining what a rate is.
Right.
So one of them is location. Like the state of Utah may have a different rate than, say, the state of Colorado or Nevada. It just depends. Condominiums could have a different pricing adjustment. In other words, it's not going to be like a 1% higher, but like there's cost of rates, and we'll go through that. So you have, location of the property, the type of property, your credit score, your debt to income ratio, meaning how much money do you have down, your loan to value, the length of the loan, the type of the loan. All these have determine how much the rate is going to be. So there just really isn't any, there's not a rate. And so there's 2 things to look at a rate. One is the rate and what does the rate cost. So people say, because I tell people, look, I can give you whatever rate you want. It's just, are you willing to pay for that cost? So, and there's a sweet spot of, in my opinion, in today's climate, because, and we know that rates will at some point come down. I'm not going to give any prediction of when, because there's natural laws at play, and then there's government manipulation, whatever you want to call it, government influence. So, then World War III breaks out, things change, So you have natural market factors, and then you have black swans. Like World War III breaking out, that's a black swan. That's something we didn't, we have no control over. So, excuse me. So you have all these variables, and then so the thing to know is right now, typically in a stable interest rate environment, the yield spread between the bond and the rate is about 2%. Now the yield spread now is about 2.5%. So that tells me people that are a lot smarter than me know we're going to be in a refi situation at some point in the future. When it is, I don't know. But that's why we have because what happens is when rates start to come down, at some point, we're going to reach the tipping point where your rates are coming down. Plus, we're not going to need the 2.5% yield spread. We only need the 2% yield spread. So you'll see an acceleration of rates coming down. So there's, like I said, people that are smarter than me know that. So I'm banking on it. I'm looking at that and saying they know, who they is. They are the people that control trillions of dollars. Like I said, a lot smarter than me, and they know the rates come down. So again, to me, that's use rates as your friend. So here's a chart. Let me share my screen here real quick. Let's see. No, we don't need sound. Let's see. What am I looking for here? No, let's see, share.
I can
So
see
you
it.
see this graph here, this chart?
Yes.
So this is renter and homeowner, right? So this is the net worth of a renter. So in 2019, it was $7,300 a renter, and a homeowner was $295. Now that's 40 times. Now it went down a little bit in 2022, but now look back in 2024, it's back up. So a renter's net worth is 10,000. A homeowner's is 415, like 42 times more money. So, and a lot of that money is being created because of the increase of value. So that's why I'm like, you got to get in. I
Yeah.
tell buyers, you got to get in. Don't worry about your forever home. You
Just
know,
buy
just get
something
in,
now.
buy
Yeah.
something and ride the wave. And then, because the talk of the crash, again, just here in Utah, like the numbers I laid out, we're like a decade. We would have to build like 7,000 houses a year for like a decade or maybe close before we even come close to the possibility of having more sellers than buyers.
And I
So
always
that
tell
means
people, even if
prices
they're
can't, yeah, they're not
sorry,
going to go down.
right. And I tell people, even if they're just going to be there 2 years, it's still you're gaining equity. I know my brother was in the military and moved every 2 years,
Right,
and he decided to buy, and then he had to move and sell that place. He got a little equity he gained. It was a condo he started off with first, apartment, and then he just slowly built up until finally he owns a home now.
right. Owns it free and clear.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how you do it.
right. Well, thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate that information, and sure you'll have some more great news and information for us on a next interview. Appreciate
Woo.
your time.
Yeah, anytime. More than happy to jump in. Obviously, I'm a student of the industry. I love this stuff. So,
Yeah, and you're great at sharing all of your knowledge with people instead of holding it for yourself.
right.
Appreciate
And if
that.
anybody, yeah, I mean, and just to let you know, I've been in the industry a long time. I've known a lot of real estate agents, and Vonda is one of those ones that is going to fight like a pit bull for you. I mean, she fights for you. That's just know that as a buyer or a seller, Vonda's the kind of agent you want because I mean, your best interest is really what she wants, and she will fight tooth and nail for your best interest. So, and there's a lot of great agents out there, but not all of them have that fight that she has. So,
You've seen
anyway,
me in action.
yeah.
I don't
So,
let things go. I take care of my clients.
and then if you have any questions about loans, feel free to reach out to me at any time. My number is 801-999-8209. So,
Thank you, Rob. And my number is 435 565 5757. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.